All right, Chapter 2 had another puzzle in Headfirst Java, and I did a couple of things. First of all, I created an HTML web page right here with these various color styles to show these snippets that the puzzle had. In each one of these pools, there's different code snippets, and when I go out of this, I had a class echo and a class echo test. The echo is the main class that has count and method hello. And this public class echo test used the public static void main string args execution statement to create an object, actually two objects of this echo class, and using those objects dig in here and do things with count and do things with the hello method. Well, originally there were a bunch of blanks, and you were supposed to fill in the blanks here in the class echo file and then fill in some blanks in the echo test file. And I found that trying to make a video off of that was so time consuming. So I just have the correct code in both of them, and I'm going to go over the output, which, because we're dealing with a while loop, we're dealing with two different objects of the class, and we're dealing with some if conditions. It kind of makes explaining it a little confusing. So I'm going to do the best that I can with this. But before I get into the actual Java code, I'm going to show you how I made the design for this web page on the right. This is the code for this HTML web page. You got your beginning HTML, and the end is all the way down there. You got a head that goes from there to there, and the only thing that's in the head is a title and a style. The title is called Pool Snips, and that shows up in the tab of the browser. The style, we are going to style the body to a background color of green, which you see. We've got an H1 tag, which is this right here, and I'm going to give that a margin left of 10 pixels because when I didn't have a margin left, the P from the word pool was too far to the left, and I wanted to line it up more over top of these pool borders. The text area is the blue area itself, and it has a border radius of 10 pixels, padding of 10 pixels, height of 100%, font size of 20 pixels, font weight of boulder, width of 280 pixels, background color of blue, color of white, and resize none. If I misspell resize none and save it and refresh the page, down here in the text area, the user can move this around and alter the way the page looks. In some instances that might be appropriate, but in this particular one it's not. So I'm going to go ahead and correctly spell resize none again and then refresh it, and now the user can't mess around in there. Another thing about the text area, that when it's not disabled, this is actually in the body, these are the elements in the body. If I were to take this disabled off and save it, then this one right here, the insertion point goes in here, and I can type in here all that I want. This is great if you're wanting to do notes in here, but I don't have the code, I don't know the code that'll make this stay permanently once you type it in. So basically, once you close out of this browser and then go back, whatever you typed in here is going to disappear. So if you want this to stay intact, you actually have to click inside the text area, do a control A to highlight, a Control C to copy, and then come in here in that particular text area and Control V to paste it in here. Once it's pasted in here, it'll stay. But when I take that text area and label it disabled, I can no longer click in here. I can no longer click in here at all and do anything. That actually, I hit refresh, and that actually didn't take all of that stuff that I typed away. But when I ran it again through Notepad++, launch in Firefox, then it took all of that out because I didn't copy it in the code itself, the source code. Okay, just a little bit about the text area. Um, I went over all of those. Then, besides the text area, I have a div that each of those pools are surrounded by a div. So you've got the div and then the text area disabled, nested inside the div, and then the information that you want nested inside the text area. The div has its own style, and that's this tan border right here with a tan background. So if I go back up to the div style, we have a border of 10 pixels tan ridge, border radius of 20 pixels, padding of 5 pixels, margin of 5 pixels, float left, height 170 pixels, and background color tan. Then we've got a special style called ID command window. And ID, you use the pound symbol to relate to IDs. So the command window is this one down here. I styled it different. All these divs have similar border. They all have the tan, and all of the text areas all have the rounded corners, and they're the same size, height, and width, and they are all with a blue background. But this right here I wanted totally different. I wanted it to look like a command window. So down in the body, you see the div and the text area. All of these are a swimming pool. Div and a text area, div and a text area, until we get to the div with no text area inside. And this div has an ID equals command window, and that's the style I'm going to read here in a minute. And then there's a paragraph set of paragraph tags here with an ID of W with the words inside file edit window help. That creates this bar up here, the illusion of a bar up here with those words. And the ID of W lets my background be white and the text be black, whereas in the div itself, the command window style is a background of black and a color of white, so that the text is white, so it's inverted. Because we are in a paragraph and a div, not a text area, each time we want to drop down to a new line, we have to use the break tag. Otherwise, all of this will try to squeeze up all on the same line. So we're using multiple break tags in this instance, and we're putting the line hello, 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 and then the line with a 10 on it. So let's look at the style for command window and the style for W. They'll both have a pound symbol up here. Pound command window. Border 10 pixels black ridge. It's this black ridge right here. Border radius I had to reset to 0 pixels. If I misspell this by putting a Z in front, and if I misspell border by putting a Z in front, watch what happens when I refresh my page. It is adopting the div style that I created up here, and I didn't want this to have that same style, so I gave it its own border of black, and the border radius, I didn't want it to be rounded, I wanted it to be pointy, so I changed those two styles so that I would get it like this, to look more like the command window. Padding is the same, 5 pixels, margin is 10 pixels, float is left, height is 175 pixels, background color is black, color is white, width is 270 pixels, font size is 20 pixels, font weight is bolder. And there's that special W ID for this bar up here. It's a background color of white, color of black, margin of 0 pixels. And that is stylizing this little paragraph that I created up here. Okay, there's the end of the style, the end of the head, and the beginning of the body. So now we're going to actually look at the element tags. We looked at how we're going to style the elements in the head, but in the body we're actually going to put the element tags themselves. Here's the H1 element, and that has nested inside pool snips to choose from. This is the header, the H1 element. Here's that div and text area. That's our first pool with the first pool's contents. Same thing here, goes for this one. Div text area and the contents for this one. Div text area and the contents for this one. Div text area and the contents for this one. Div text area, the contents for the last one. And then the div with the ID of command window, the paragraph with the ID of W, the contents for the paragraph, the break tag, and then the rest of the lines with break tags. And then the end of the div, the end of the body, the end of the HTML. So that's basically how to make this page look exactly like this. I just gave you the entire page with all of its styles. The head with the styles and the body with the element tags. Okay, so let me get out of this. Okay, here is the main class, class echo. We have int count equals 0. So we have something that describes something about the class echo. It's got a count that's set to 0, and there's one single method, void hello, and in the curly braces system.out.println, and all it is the word hello with 3 dots. And when that hello method is called, it's not creating the word hello right now by itself. When this test class calls the hello method, that's when we physically see this hello output. So let's look at the test class, public class echo test, curly brace, public static void main string args, curly brace. Here we're going to create the objects of the class that are going to use the things in the class. So we have to use the name of the class first, which is echo, and then we give it some kind of object name, whatever you want to call it. E1 equals new echo. So this entire line gives us an object that's ready to be used of this class. So E1 can do things with count, and E1 can do things with the method hello. And we have a second one, echo E2 equals new echo. So now both E1 and E2 objects can use count and use hello. We're going to create a variable called x. It's an integer value and it's going to be set to 0. This is going to be a counter, even though this is also, but I'm not going to go into, as long as you name things differently and you understand what's what. You could actually name this count if you want, but then it would be confusing in the rest of your code what you were referring to. We have a while loop here. While this is true, now x is created as 0, and while x is less than 4, x is less than 4, so that's true. So the next line inside this while loop will execute. So we're using E1, the object, the dot operator, and then we're calling that hello method right here. So right now, just with this line right here, we're calling this method right here, and this line right here is going to be put out on our command line output window. After it puts hello on there, it's going to take the count. E1.count equals E1.count plus 1. Count starts off as 0. So E1 count, the value of E1 count is initially 0. So we're going to reset that to E1 count plus 1. So we're going to increment that original 0 to now be 1. So the value of E1 count at this point in the code, this first pass, this first flow of the while loop, E1 is going to be 1. So we're going to come over here in Notepad because we have to keep track of this. If you try to keep track of this in your head, if you're a brainchild, you can do it. If you're a medium kind of person like me, you'll get a headache. Okay, so we have established that our first E1 count has a value of 1 at this point. Now we have an if condition, if x is equal to 3. Well, x, we didn't change x at all. X is still 0. So this is a false statement, which means that everything in these curly braces will be ignored, and we jump down here. If x is greater than 0, well, 0 is not greater than 0. 0 is equal to 0. Therefore, everything in these curly braces are ignored. But now we come to this line that says x equals x plus 1. So x started off as 0 up here, and we're finally changing it right here. So now 0 plus 1 is 1. Now we are here. X is equal to 1 now at this point. So we're flowing down like a waterfall to the code. All of this right here, I put in myself because I wanted to physically see what E1 was and what E2 was. This right here, when we run it, I'll show you, but it's basically going to print out in that first loop. We're going to print out what E1 is because it's going to say the words E1 is plus E1.count. So that's going to give us the value of that, which I just wrote is supposed to be 1. Then I also have system.out.println E2 is plus E2 count. We didn't do anything with E2 count at this point. So E2, to pick up what count is right here, we're not actually changing anything in the original class. So the original class, the count is 0. When we start messing with that here, it changes as we go along. But E2 count right now as it stands is 0 because we haven't done anything with code. Okay, so we're at the end of the while loop. We have to go up to the beginning of the while loop and test this condition again. At this point, x is 1. Is x less than 4? Yes, it is. So now we're going to do this. E1.hello means we're going to call this, and so the word hello is going to go out to this second line. E1 count now is going to increment up by 1 again. So now here, it was originally 1. It's going to increment by 1. So now E1 count is going to be 2. If x is equal to 3, well, no, it's not. We're not there yet. So all of this gets ignored again. If x is greater than 0, well, x is greater than 0 at this point because x is 1. Now we're going to do something with that E2 count. E2 count is going to be equal to E2 count, which is 0. Right here, it was 0, plus E1 count. So we've got E2 count as 0 and E1 count as 2. 0 plus 2 is 2. So at this point, E2 count is 2, based on this mathematical expression. Now we're at our x, and we're incrementing x by 1. So now we're here. X is equal to 2 now. And again, the system, the output when I run this in the command prompt is going to say E1 is plus the value and E2 is plus the value. So basically what I'm putting here as we go along in the notepad should show up in my command prompt window. But anyway, we're at the end of the while loop, so we go back up to the condition again. It looks for the word while, and it's asking, is 2 less than 4? 2 is less than 4, so we're going to call this hello again. So we get our third hello line right here. And we take E1 count and we're going to change it. We're going to increment it by 1. Well, remember our E1 count, the last time we had a value for our E1 count, it was 2. We're incrementing it now, so now it's going to be 3. If x is equal to 3, well, we're not there yet because x is 2. We're still right here, so all this gets ignored. If x is greater than 0, which it is, 2 is greater than 0, so now we're going to do something to this E2 count. We're going to take the value of E2 count as it is right now, and we're going to add that to E1 count. Well, E2 count, the last time we created a value was 2. The newest value for E1 count is 3. So our E2 count is adding those two values together, which is going to give us 5. End the if condition, and now we increment x up 1 more. So now we are here. And again, we're going to let the system print out the values of E1 and E2. End of the while loop. We're going to go back up to the while again. And x is 3, so the condition is 3 less than 4. While 3 is less than 4, that's true. So now we're going to get that hello that's going to print out, the hello method that's going to print out hello again. So now we're on this is our command prompt, we're on our 4th hello. Then we're going to change what our E1 count is by taking that value and adding 1 to it. 3 was our last E1 count, so now it's going to be upped by 1, which makes it 4. If x is equal to 3, well, x is equal to 3 now. So now we're going to change our E2 count value by taking the E2 count value and adding 1 to it. Well, the last time we had an E2 count, it was valued at 5. So now we're going to add 1 and we're going to make that 6. If x is greater than 0, well, 3 is greater than 0. So now we're going to take this E2 count, we're going to do something else to it. Here we added 1 to it. Here we're going to add the latest E2 value, E2 count value, plus the latest E1 count value. Well, the latest E2 value was 6, and the latest E1 value was 4. And if we add these two together, x E2 dot count is equal to 10 at this point. We're going to increment x. So now x is equal to 4. And our command prompt is going to spit out what the values of E1 and E2 are. We're at the end of the while loop. We're going to creep back up here to the while again, and we're going to ask this condition. X is 4. While 4 is less than 4, 4 is not less than 4. So that means everything in the whiles loop will be ignored. And then the very next statement says system.out.println E2.count. So it's going to print out the value of E2.count, the most recent value, which is 10. So that is how we get the very last line as 10 as our output. Okay, so now I'm going to run this. Here's our command prompt window. Again, I have to change my directory. Use CD for change directory. I'm going to go to the desktop, and I'm going to Java C because I want to compile out of Java, out of class Echo, and these are the two classes I'm dealing with, and class Echo Test. Echo Test is the one with the public static void main string args. So this is the one I want to compile, this name, echotest.java. So in my command prompt I have Java C, echotest.java. I hit enter. It compiled cleanly, so now I'm just going to run it by using the keyword Java and echotest and hit enter. Hello. Now let's compare my notes to the actual output. Hello. E1 is 1, E2 is 0. So for the first pass we should have 1 and 0. Hello. For the second pass we should have 2 and 2, which we do. Hello. We should have 3 and 5 for the third pass, which we do. Hello. 4 and 10. 4 and 10. Okay, let's see. I had to add those two to get the final 10. Okay, if x is greater than 0, which it was, well, yeah, I actually came up with it right here. So this was like a mid step, because first it incremented it by 1 right here, which changed it from 5 to 6, and then here adding those two, 4 and 6, gave us the E2 count of 10. So that's correct, because once we got down here it was just printing out the most recent values. So the most recent value for E1 count was 4 and the most recent value for E2 count was 10. So when it shows 4 and 10, that was correct. And then when x was incremented to 4 and went back up and did this condition, it did not satisfy 4 is not less than 4. So that's when we came to this very last line that wanted us to print out the value of E2 count. Okay, so I showed you a few things here. I showed you how to design a simple web page with a few little styles. I didn't show you these two. Let me get out of there. I did not show you these two. Don't save. I did not show you these two classes before we picked the snippets because I thought it would make this whole video too long. But I did show you how the code ran and how to read through the code. And it's good to open up Notepad and give yourself like a scorecard to watch how the values of different objects change based on what you do with them, and how you change the expressions and how you change the values. Because obviously E1 and E2 did not keep the same value throughout the whole code because we did different things to E1 count and we did different things to E2 count. So we had to base it on starting all over from scratch and then just paying attention to the object itself.